Goblin launch detected.
Hey gang! Using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCG Player. And if you'd like to join the generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. Just a heads up, but Flipside Gaming is going to be giving away a Zendikar Rising set booster box. The contest will run from today, August 31st, all the way to September 25th, 2020. The typical rules apply of 1 entry per household. You'll be entered for your chance to win when you use my promo code on an order of $10 or more, or if you send Flipside Gaming a stamped, self-addressed envelope or postcard to the address found above. So good luck and have fun! Today's game features the Punt Squad, with Scott borrowing my Daretti deck. He keeps Metalworker, Gilded Lotus, Bloodstained Mire, Scrap Mastery, Wheel of Fortune, Mountain, and Duplicant. I am playing my Mardu Spellslinger deck featuring Vial Smasher and Tymna keeping Cleansing Nova, Smoldering Marsh, Swamp, Yawgmoth's Will, Primal Amulet, Caves of Koilos, and a Plains. Kiefer is playing Vaevictus keeping Kazandu Refuge, Warped Landscape, Forest, Dawn Treader Elk, Bane of Balaged, It That Betrays, and Hua Tao Honored Physician. Adam is playing Animar, who would eventually become Omnath, and keeps a Solemn Simulacrum, Den Protector, Coiling Oracle, Priest of Titania, Elvish Mystic, Forest, and Polluted Delta. I win the die roll and start us off. I play a tap Smoldering Marsh. Kiefer plays a tap Kazandu Refuge, gaining 1 as it enters. Adam plays a Forest and casts Elvish Mystic. Scott plays a Bloodstained Mire, passing. I play a Plains. Kiefer plays a Forest and casts Dawn Treader Elk. At the end of turn, Scott takes 1 as he sacrifices the Mire to go and find a mountain. Adam plays his Delta, sacrificing it and losing 1 to find a land. He grabs a Steam Vents, taking 2 to have it come in untapped. He then plays Priest of Titania, passing. Scott plays a Mountain. I also play a Mountain and cast Tymna, passing. Kiefer drops another Forest, and 3 mana gets him Hua Tao. Adam taps his Mana Dorks and a Forest, which totals 4 mana. This he uses to cast a Solemn Simulacrum, and goes to find a basic as it enters. He passes to Scott while searching. Scott plays a Mountain and casts Crucible of Worlds, passing turn. I drop Reliquary Tower and cast Conqueror's Flail and equip it to Tymna as it resolves. I then swing Tymna at Adam, who blocks with the Solemn Simulacrum. I gain 4 life, and as the Solemn dies, Adam draws a card. Kiefer plays a Warped Landscape and then casts Wood Elves. He goes to find a forest for his library, passing while shuffling. Adam plays a Forest and is then able to cast Animar. He casts a Llanowar Elves, gaining a +1/+1 counter on Animar as he casts it, and Adam then taps the Priest for 4, because the Priest counts all elves and not just his own. He uses 2 of it to cast Regrowth, returning the Solemn to his hand. He has 2 green floating, and taps the Mystic for his 3rd mana needed to cast the now reduced in casting cost of Solemn Simulacrum. This gives him another +1/+1 counter onto Animar as he casts it, and he then goes to find a basic as it enters. Scott draws for turn, and plays the Bloodstained Mire from his yard, losing 1 to find a mountain. He casts a Mana Crypt, and then brings out Daretti. He upticks the Walker, discarding Duplicant, and drawing 1. Scott then casts Faithless Looting, drawing 2, and discarding 2. I draw, and play my Caves of Koilos. I swing Tymna at Daretti, dealing 4, and gaining 4 life. I then count up the creatures on the board, casting Blasphemous Act for only 1 red. With the spell in the stack, Kiefer sacrifices the Dawn Treader Elk to find a basic, and once it resolves, and puts the Treader on top of his library by tapping Hua Tao. The wipe then resolves, and Adam draws from the 2nd death of his Solemn. 4 mana then gets me a Primal Amulet, and I pass because who needs proper sequencing? Kiefer has enough mana to cast his commander, Vaevictus, and does so passing. Adam does the same, recasting Animar and passing as well. Scott rolls for his mana crypt trigger and picks odds, not taking any damage. He plays a mountain from the yard for his turn, and upticks Daretti, discarding 2 and drawing 2. Metalworker then joins the party, and Scott passes to me. I play a swamp and cast Soul Ring. We then see Vial Smasher join the party before I pass to Kiefer. Kiefer untaps and plays a mountain. He pays 2 for the Dawn-Treader Elk again, and goes to combat. He swings Vaevictus at Daretti, and gets to pick some targets for Vaevictus' on-attack trigger. He targets Adam's Steam Vents, Scott's Metalworker, my Primal Amulet, and his own Dawn-Treader. Everyone gets a permanent except for Adam, with Kiefer getting Rhythm of the Wild, Scott getting Detection Tower, and I get Chromatic Lantern. Daretti then gets devoured by the dragon, and in his second main phase, Kiefer plays out a Guiltleaf Seer, and decides to give it haste with the Riot choice. Adam draws, and plays a Bloodbraid Elf. He gets a +1/+1 counter onto Animar, and then cascades into a River Familiar. He casts it from the cascade, gaining Animar another counter, and then resolves a Familiar trigger as it enters. He keeps one of the cards, and bottoms the rest. The Bloodbraid Elf then resolves. Adam plays out a Reflecting Pool as his land drop, and then casts Rishkar. This gives Animar another +1/+1 counter, and as Rishkar enters, he gets to put a +1/+1 counter onto the Familiar, and another one onto Animar. Adam then plays a Morph creature for free, giving Animar his 5th +1/+1 counter. Moving to combat, Animar hits me for 6 commander damage, while the Bloodbraid Elf hits Scott for 3. Scott rolls for the Mana Crypt and takes 3. He draws for turn, and plays Sequestered Stash from his yard with the Crucible. Scott then recasts Daretti, and upticks the Walker, discarding 1 and drawing 1, before playing out Sphere of Resistance and passing. I pay 4 mana in my main phase for Beseech the Queen. Because of the split cost, the spell has a converted mana cost of 6, and it has me rolling for Vial Smasher's trigger. I assign the numbers to my opponents, and roll, with Vial Smasher deciding to do 6 to Scott. I then go and tutor for a card, and have to reveal it, showing the table for Phyrexian Arena, which I cast. I then pass, and at the end of turn, Kiefer activates his Seer. Kiefer plays a Naya Panorama, and taps 8 mana for Bane of Balaged. It can't be countered, and he has it come in with haste thanks to the Riot trigger. Yikes. He goes to combat, swinging Vaevictus at Daretti, and the Bane at Adam. He resolves the Vaevictus trigger first, having Adam sacrifice the Morph, Scott sacrifice the Sphere, and I sacrifice the Arena. He picks his own Panorama, and Adam reveals a Misty Rainforest, Scott has a Mountain, I reveal Inner Fire, leaving it on top, and Kiefer hits a Tyrant's Familiar. Adam then has to exile 2 permanents, and we say goodbye to Rishkar and the Familiar to the Bane trigger. Daretti then takes the hit, and so does Adam, who loses 7 life. Kiefer remembers about Riot, and has the Tyrant's Familiar come in with a +1/+1 counter instead of haste. At the end of turn, Adam sacrifices his Misty Rainforest, losing 3 total to find a Breeding Pool untapped. He uses the land to cast a Mystical Tutor, and puts on top of his library Veil of Summer. Adam draws the Veil, and casts Neoform, targeting the Bloodbraid Elf. He sacrifices it, and goes to find a 5-drop, putting out Momir Vig with a +1/+1 counter. He then plays Coiling Oracle, gaining another counter from Animar. This gives him 2 Momir Vig triggers, and he resolves the green creature trigger first, finding Dockside Extortionist and putting it on top. He then resolves a Momir Vig blue creature trigger, revealing what he knows to be the Dockside, and gets to put it to hand. The Oracle then enters, and Adam reveals Bloodstained Mire off the top, putting it to the field. We then see him paying 1 red for Dockside Extortionist, giving Animar another counter, and then making 6 treasures as it enters. He sacrifices the Mire, losing 1, and then taking 2 more to have a Stomping Ground come in untapped. He then uses all of his lands and treasures for Green Sun Zenith, where X is 7, and goes to his library. He grabs Dragonlord Atarka, who enters and deals all 5 of her damage to the Bane of Balaged. Adam then swings Animar at Kiefer, who just takes the hit, and he passes after that. Scott rolls for his crypt trigger and changes to even to avoid the damage. This plan backfires though, and Scott takes another 3. He then draws for turn and plays Phyrexia's Core from his graveyard, and then casts Alhamret's Archive. Scott then flashes back Faithless Looting, drawing 4 cards and discarding 2. He discards Squee and a Mycosynth Lattice, and then passes turn. I draw and play Tymna, paying the 5. I roll for the Vial Smasher trigger, and this time she hits Adam for 3. I then gear Tymna up with the flail and pass. Kiefer activates his Seer on his upkeep, looking at his top 2 cards and puts them back in whatever order he wants. He draws and goes to combat. Vaevictus is a bit aimless without Daretti, but he swings him at Scott all the same, and the Tyrant at me. He targets the Dragon Lord, the Archive, Vial Smasher, and his own Seer. They all get sacrificed, and we reveal off the top with Adam getting a Wood Elves, going to find him a land, Scott getting an Unwinding Clock, I get nothing because it's a sorcery, and Kiefer gets a Magmatic Force. He then resolves the Tyrant's Familiar trigger, blasting Tymna back to the command zone with a 7 damage. I then take 8, while Scott takes 6 commander damage. Kiefer also has the Force come in with a +1/+1 counter from Riot, and he passes turn. On Adam's upkeep, Kiefer gets the Force trigger, bolting the Momir Vig. Adam then draws, and swings Animar at Kiefer. Kiefer isn't afraid though, taking another 8 commander damage, and with nothing else, Adam passes. On Scott's upkeep, the Magmatic Force triggers, and Kiefer has 3 damage go to the Coiling Oracle. Kiefer also sacrifices his Warp Landscape to go and find a basic, while Scott rolls for his Crypt. He avoids taking the 3, and then plays out the Bloodstained Mire, losing 1 to find a mountain from his library. Scott then taps 7 for all his dust to deal with Kiefer's increasingly out of control board. It resolves, and he then moves to resolve Scrap Mastery, and we swap our artifacts on the board for those in the yard. Scott gets a ton of value, while I get to return my Primal Amulet, and Adam gets back his Solemn, which lets him go and find a basic. All permanents are now artifacts, and all cards are now colorless thanks to the Lattice, and Scott passes. I cast Shreds of Sanity, returning the Beseech to hand and discarding something. I then cast the Beseech and add another counter to my amulet and go and tutor for a card. I reveal by force, but am sadly tapped out at this point, and have to wait until my next turn to cast the spell. Kiefer casts a Scroll Rack, paying the extra 1 for the sphere, which I didn't have to do because of the reduction from my amulet, and he activates it. We then see a Grixis Panorama, before he pays 2 mana for a Soul Ring. Adam draws, and Kiefer lets us know how he feels.
Pay 2 for Soul Ring, turn 20 is not a good feel. And then not casting anything immediately after.
Done. Adam then casts a Nature's Lore to go and find a land, and passes turn. Scott draws for turn, and taps the Metalworker, revealing 5 artifacts from his hand, and gaining 10 colorless. He casts Staff of Nin, and then brings back Daretti. He upticks the Walker, discarding 2, and drawing 4 because of the Archive. He then overloads a Vandal Blast, taking out all of his opponent's permanents because they're all artifacts, and at this point we realize the game is we scoop the game up to Scott. Game review time. I thought today's game was a pretty good example of everyone getting to do a little bit of something, and everyone actually got to cast their commanders. Adam burst out of the gates pretty early on with a ton of mana and ramping pretty hard, but a timely board wipe put him in his place. But up from his ashes, Kiefer arose, and Vaevictus continues to show just how random and powerful those hits can be, flipping over fantastic cards like Rhythm of the Wilds and then the Magmatic Force, which sometimes Kiefer doesn't even know is in his deck. Scott in the meantime seemed to be doing a good job of biding his time and filtering out his hand for bad cards to get good ones in. I maintain that Alhamret's Archive is crazy good in this deck, allowing you to go super deep into it, and I love seeing him being able to use the Crucible of Worlds and the fetch lands to great effect. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.